Hello. Hello everybody and welcome. Hi. Welcome to another week of PlanBee live learning sessions. My name is Mr. Ryan and today I'm your teacher. I'm working here from home as well and I'm really looking forward to today's packed session, which is Year 3-4 English. Now I'm just going to check and see if you can all hear me. Lovely, I can see that many of you are there on the chat already and some familiar names there, people returning. Lovely to see you again if you're back. Hi everybody. So, thank you for joining us again. We will be starting today's main session in a few minutes. I'm going to set everybody off who's here already on a quick thinking and talking and writing task while I wait for everybody to arrive and to explain to parents a little bit about this and upcoming sessions. So, before we get into all of that, let me show you this. If I can make the screen load. There we go. Right. Okay, children, everybody who's here already, I'd like you to start thinking straight away. Today's English lesson is all about something that happened during the Second World War. And I'm sure some of you have already learnt or read a little bit about the Second World War already. Before we get through some stuff with parents, this is your quick task while people arrive this morning. I want you to think about what you already know about evacuees and evacuation. That's an interesting word, isn't it? Evacuee. Do you know what an evacuee is? Do you know who was evacuated during the Second World War? I wonder what else you might know. I wonder if you can think of some words that might be associated with evacuees, evacuation and World War II. You can have a think and you can chat to a partner while I'm talking to parents. And if you like, as well, you can, on a piece of scrap paper, write some words. Write as many words as you can think of down all about evacuees and evacuation. You might like to draw them just around the word evacuee in the centre of your piece of scrap paper. And I'll give you a bit of a clue. Any words that you write down today might help you with our main task. So, off you go. Parents, welcome again, thank you. Let's just run through today's session. It's quite packed. Because it's English and we're going to be doing some writing, it's going to be a little bit longer than some of our previous sessions. And that's because we just need a bit more time when we're doing writing to prepare for it and make sure that we've got all of the ideas that we need and we've got all of the words and phrases ready and at our fingertips for some fantastic writing. We also have a number of follow-up activities, which I'll show you towards the end of today's session. And they are going to be fantastic for this because they are things that you can do to extend learning today, tomorrow, and throughout the week about this session today. So if you haven't already, please do register via the registration form in the description below. That's really useful for us. It helps us know who's here, who we're teaching. And then as well, if you would like to, the second link in the description below is for today's resources. Now, if you can't download them, it doesn't matter. If you can't print them, it certainly doesn't matter. All anybody will need today, as usual, is pen, pencil, paper. Ideally, if you have it, some lined paper today or a lined notebook, and that's going to help because we're going to be doing some writing. Additionally, below there is a link to the home learning enrolment for parents, and that's to get information about upcoming online learning sessions and If you haven't already enrolled via that, I'd really encourage you to do so. And I'd love it if you could share that with any other parents you think might find that helpful. We're doing live sessions at 11 a.m. every day this week. They're going to be for some different age ranges. But we are going to return to a lower key stage 2 activity on Friday at 11 a.m. So that's the age range that today's session is aimed at. And I'd like to welcome you all back for that. And of course, any others you want to watch and join in with as well. But hopefully I will see many of you back on Friday for some Year 3-4 maths. Lastly, in the live chat are my two teacher colleagues again. They're there to help answer some questions. It's very difficult for me to get to them all because there's so many of you writing so quickly. I'll try to answer some. But Abby and Emma, welcome back again. Thank you. They're there to moderate today's chat and to help with some questions. Because this is YouTube, we do ask that these sessions are supervised by parents or adults at all times. So, I'm just going to have a look at the chat now as we get ready to start today's session. You can see the timetable up on screen now, and we've actually got a little video we're going to watch. I've added a link to that in the description as well so that you can watch it again later. So let's just have a look. Wow, people know lots about evacuation and the war by the looks of this. I'm going to have to scroll right up to see what you've said. Let's have a look. Pratam, welcome back. People were evacuated due to the war, and there were some air allies. Oh, interesting. Yes, yeah. Evacuation means to evacuate people from a place to another to keep them safe. And Max and Melly, mums and kids were evacuated, and the boys went to war. Oh, well, some very young men, and in a few cases, boys who weren't yet adults did go to war, didn't they? Yeah. Okay. An evacuee, a person who got evacuated. What great ideas, everybody. I can see that all of your prior knowledge and learning is going to help you with today's session. So, let's get started. I asked you what you already knew about evacuation in World War II. Why were people evacuated? Who was evacuated? Where were people evacuated from? And where were they evacuated to? And I've seen some brilliant suggestions in the chat there. Well done. So I'm going to read along and we're going to zip through these today because we've got a video to watch and then some writing to do. So, evacuation. In 1939, war was brewing. The government, that's the government in the UK, were worried that German forces would bomb major cities and ports in England, such as the cities of London, Coventry, Birmingham and Portsmouth. Do you live near any one of those cities? Or maybe you live in one of them. 3 days after the war, before the war officially began, Operation Pied Piper was ordered and 1.5 million people were evacuated in 3 days. Isn't that incredible? That many people evacuated in 3 days. And there you can see a poster from 1939 all about the evacuation procedures. Now, you might not have known this. Evacuation was not compulsory. Parents could choose to send their children away or not. However, after the first bombs fell on the cities, people realised just how dangerous living in a city could be. And look at that, these children here sitting in the rubble after a bombing raid. Oh, I'm just going to read a comment here from Clara. Thank you, Clara. My great-grandpa got evacuated from London to Wales, and he met my great-grandma at school in Wales. After the war, my great-grandma went to college in London and met again, and they married. Wow, what an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that, Clara. I'm sure there are many of you who have stories of great-grandparents and other relatives and what they were doing during World War II. That might help you today. You could perhaps ask somebody at home. Let's carry on. Vulnerable people, such as children, disabled people, pregnant women, and mothers of young children were evacuated to countryside locations like Devon and Cornwall, which were less likely to be bombed. School teachers were also evacuated to the same places as their classes. I wonder if anybody here today lives in or near Devon or Cornwall. Most evacuations were by train, and the children had to say goodbye to their parents and travel alone to their destinations. Can you imagine what that must have been like? Most of the time, the children did not know where they were going or who they were going to stay with when they got there. How scary. Of course, yes, we have people here, don't we, watching and taking part today who are not necessarily from the UK, but who were definitely living in countries that were involved in the Second World War. And so people living in India and other parts of the world, they would have had relatives who were involved in the war effort in their countries as well. So, evacuation, again, here we go. This is a set of lists. The government made these packing lists for evacuees. Each evacuee had to have a gas mask, ration book, identity card, and clothing coupons with them. Wow, those aren't things that we normally carry around with us today, are they? I wonder why each evacuee had to have a gas mask. Can you have a think? Maybe you remember, maybe you've learnt about this before. If you've got a partner you're working with today, then you can tell them, or you can tell me in the chat now. Also, you could tell me what you think a ration book is. Tell me now, if you can tell me what you think a ration book is. Sorry, I'm just seeing on the chat here, I think there was a little interruption in my live stream. Hopefully you can all still see me now. Oh, that's an interesting suggestion about pollution. But actually, Preta, no, it wasn't because of pollution. No, the gas masks were for something else. Shall I tell you? At the time, the British government were very afraid that some of the bombs might contain poisonous gas or something else that could harm people. And so everybody had a gas mask, which they had to carry at all times. And when there was a bombing raid, they had to quickly get their gas mask on to make sure that they were safe. Can you imagine how scary that must have been? Ration books, let's have a look at some suggestions. They have removable stamps that you can buy rationed items like sugar, meat, cooking oil and canned goods. Well, that's a fantastic answer. Yes, yes. Excellent suggestion, yes. They had to carry an identity card as well so that people knew who they were. And clothing coupons were used to buy clothes as well. Lots of people saying the freeze has frozen. Hopefully it's unfrozen for you now. If it hasn't, then you can try refreshing the page. Occasionally these streams drop out. Hopefully it won't happen again today. Okay. Now, what do you think happened when these children living in the cities got on the trains alone, without their parents, not knowing where they were going, and they arrived in the country at the other end? Well, they would be led to a local church or village hall. The billets, or host families, would then be allowed to choose which evacuee they would look after. They often chose the children who looked neat, healthy and well behaved. It was a horrible feeling to be left until last. Oh dear, can you imagine being left until last? I'm just going to stop for a moment and just make sure people whose live streams froze are able to see again. So perhaps if you can just let me know if the stream is working for you again on the chat, and then I'll continue. I know some people have refreshed the page. Goodness, yes, somebody's saying on the chat these evacuees might get lost. Yes. Oh, good. I'm glad you can still see me, some of you. That's good. Okay. Let's continue. The children didn't know how long they would be there for, and when they would see their parents again. Now, we're going to watch a video together, and it's about 9 minutes long. So hopefully you'll be able to hear the sound as I play this. Thank you. Good. I'm glad you can see me again now. This video, which we're about to watch, is about 9 minutes long, and it's about a girl around the age of some of you who takes a train journey to the countryside with a woman who was a child during the war, who was an evacuee herself. We'll watch together because it might give you some ideas for today's task. So watching carefully and listening, and here we go.
They told us that Britain had declared war on Germany.
I used to go home looking up to the sky and hoping I would see a dogfight.
It was like one big adventure. That's your great-granddad?
Yeah.
And we called him Amina Butcher because that's where we used to get all our meat.
Yes. That's me, Anisha. I'm 11, and this is Mrs. Campbell. She's 78. She's been a family friend for many years.
Do you remember Nana Lily?
Yeah.
Well, you must take after her, Anisha.
Yes. Mrs. Campbell was 5 at the start of World War II and lived with her mum and dad.
This was my dad, and his name was Simon, and he was born in Jamaica. He came over into the country. He was in the Merchant Navy.
Mrs. Campbell's dads would go away on ships for up to 2 years at a time. They carried goods like food, coal and oil. His job became even more important during the war as Britain relied on these things to survive. The family lived in Bute Town, close to Cardiff Docks in South Wales.
Didn't it look different then?
The docks were targeted along with many big cities by enemy bombing raids. Over 2,000 bombs fell on Cardiff during the war and hundreds of buildings were destroyed.
It was quite a dangerous place to be in, and that's why some parents wanted their children to be evacuated.
Being evacuated meant leaving your home and going to live in smaller towns and villages outside the cities which were less likely to be bombed. 3 million people were evacuated during the war. Mrs. Campbell was one of them. She was sent with her classmates from St. Mary's, the same school I'm at now.
Right, Anisha? Now you're going to be an evacuee. There's your suitcase. There's your gas mask, which is very, very important. And there's your label.
Labels were important in case children got lost, and everyone had a gas mask, just in case poisonous gas bombs were dropped during air raids.
So 3
Mrs.
million
Campbell
were
and I
evacuated.
are going on the same
do you remember
journey
we
that
saw
she
that 1.5
took as an
million,
evacuee
half of them in
when
the
she was
first
7.
weekend of evacuations?
We didn't go on trains very often. I don't think I'd ever travelled from this station before. So although we were a bit unhappy, we were also very excited.
Children from cities all over the country were evacuated on trains like this one.
Some have got little cases, like I had a small case. That's a gas mask. They all look happy, don't they?
Yes.
Because to all of us, it was like one big adventure.
Yeah.
Do you think they were just feeling happy?
We're going
Or
to
perhaps they were
Aberdeen,
feeling
which
other
is
things as well?
25 miles from Cardiff, to where Mrs. Campbell and her school friends were evacuated.
Do you remember
what you saw when you were on the train?
Actually, it's 70 years since I was evacuated.
Yes.
So my memory's not all that good. But one thing I do remember is seeing so much green, because where we lived in the docks, we didn't have a lot of greenery.
Many of the children coming from the other cities like London would have seen all of the countryside and the animals living in the countryside for the first time too.
And we were supposed to be staying there until the end of the war. And I remember some of us were looking at our gas masks and wondering if we'd ever need to use the gas masks. I think we just, for the most part, enjoyed the journey, although we did have some children who were a little bit upset.
So you made the most of it?
Oh, we made the most of it. Those are very good words. We made the most of it. We had to.
Yes. When Mrs. Campbell arrived in Aberdeen, she got off the train, just like me, with her suitcase, gas mask and label.
We all had to walk down to the school, and I wanted to go home, and I remember saying, I want to go home to my mother. Oh, this is where the Avon Junior School was when I came here.
Yes, it would have been a steam train at the time.
Very, very different, but
all of the trains were steam trains.
It's the stonework that I remember most of all. The stones and the mountains and the green trees. They remind me of when I was here all those years ago. We all stood in the big hall, and people would come in and they would say, oh, I'll have these children, and oh, I'll have those children. And I remember that my friend Betty Neal and I, we were about the last two to be chosen, because we wanted to stay together. And I wondered if anyone was going to come and take us, or if we'd have to get on the train and go back home. So then we were feeling a little bit apprehensive, as, you know, why hasn't anyone come along and taken us? But a nice couple, Mr. and Mrs. Challenger, they said that they wanted us to go and stay with them.
Apprehensive is a good word,
and her friend
isn't it?
Betty walked the short distance to this house,
Means
where
nervous,
Mr. and Mrs. Challenger lived,
fearful.
with their daughter Hazel.
We came into the house, and Mrs. Challenger had a meal arranged for us. It was placed in front of myself and Betty Neal, and then I think it was then that it dawned on us that we were away from home, and we just sat there. We didn't pick up the knife or the fork. We just sat looking at each other. And then Mrs. Challenger said to us, she said, if you don't know how to use a knife and fork back, use your fingers. She just thought that because we didn't pick up a knife and fork, that we didn't know how to use them. How would you have felt if you were in my shoes, that you were coming out, leaving your mum and dad and coming up here to live with strange people?
I think I might have felt left out, because they would have had a daughter that would know them, and they might treat me differently than they treated her.
I don't think we ever felt left out, but now and again Hazel and I would have an argument. But the thing is, I could say, how did she feel that here were her parents taking in two other girls?
Yes.
And previous to that, she'd been the only child in the house.
Did your parents ever come to visit?
My hair was really, really bushy, and my mother used to plait it. But I'm afraid Mrs. Challenger didn't know how to plait my hair, so my mother would come up on a weekend. She would plait my hair tightly, and then all during the week I'd just go like that with a brush. So that was nice and flat, and my plaits stayed in place. And also, my dad, who was a seaman, was going away to sea, and my mother brought him up to see me. He brought me a handbag, a little leather handbag that he'd brought from another country, and I remember it had Red Riding Hood on it.
Why did you go back home to Cardiff?
I went back earlier than I was expected to, because my dad was killed in September 1942. His ship was torpedoed by a German submarine, and I think my mother was a bit upset about that, and she just felt quite alone with me being in Aberdeen and my dad not coming home anymore. What she said to me was, I'm taking you home because if we're going to die, we'll die together. I went home, but unfortunately I left the beautiful handbag with Red Riding Hood on. I've always regretted that because that was the last thing that my father ever bought me.
After the war, Mrs. Campbell went back to St. Mary's School and later became a teacher there, but she never forgot her experiences during the war.
The fact that you were, taken from your house, your home, put on a train, met new people, to me, it was almost like an adventure from an Enid Blyton book.
Wow. Wasn't that amazing? Hearing about those experiences of evacuees during the war. And weren't those pictures incredible as well? I thought that was really interesting how the evacuee, she described a range of emotions that she felt, didn't she? Apprehensive, but also excited, like she was going on an adventure, and scared. So many different feelings. Now, I want you to remember some of those details from that video because they might help you with what we're going to do today. You're going to be writing a diary entry of an evacuee child. Well, you may go on to write a diary entry later on during this week, depending on what other learning that you're doing at home. But we are certainly going to think about what a diary entry might include. And you will need to create a fictional character of the child whose diary you will write. And this character can be a version of you or a whole new character, and it's entirely up to you how you do it. But let's have a quick look at some examples of diary entries. Now, let's see. As I read this to you, why don't you think about how this character might have felt about being evacuated? Dear Diary, today was the day. I still can't quite believe I've left London. Mama said that I'll have fun in the country, but I want to stay with her. I hate that I have to leave everything behind, including all my beautiful dresses and the beautiful dolls that I got for Christmas. When we arrived at the train station and I saw all the other children with gas masks and labels just like me, it was the final straw. With tears streaming down my face, I sat on the ground and refused to go. Ignoring me, Papa and the grumpy train guard loaded my new suitcase onto the train. I realised that this was happening, if I liked it or not. Goodness, how did that character feel about it? Here's another example. Perhaps this character's a bit different. They might have felt different. Hey journal, I'm telling you, when I saw the steam train waiting in the station for us, I was giddy with excitement. A whole new adventure in the countryside with my brother was going to be incredible. This was the first time we had ever left the city and I couldn't wait. Mama had to hold on tight to us as we weaved through the crowded platform. That's when she decided to plant the wettest kisses on our faces. Yuck! We giggled because Tommy was left with a bright red lipstick stain on his cheek. Mama's giggle didn't last long though. She had tears in her eyes as we climbed onto the train. As I waved to her, I realised that I didn't know when I'd see her again. Tommy was crying on the train as the train left, and I held tightly onto his hand. Wow, a whole mixture of feelings that character was experiencing. There were some nice details in that I liked. The bit about the big wet kiss and the red lipstick stain, that was quite a nice detail, wasn't it? I wonder if you could include that kind of detail in your diary entry writing. Let's look at one more. Dear Diary, I couldn't sleep last night. All I could think about was leaving my family and being sent miles and miles away. My brother was already miles and miles away, serving in the Navy. I didn't think I could bear being away from my parents as well. We arrived at the station and waited on the platform. My mind was going a mile a minute. Well, that's a good phrase, isn't it? A mile a minute. Worrying about what was going to happen when I got to Devon. What if no one wanted to host me? What if my host family were mean and strict? I'd be worried about that. What if I couldn't make any friends? I think lots of people would worry about that, wouldn't they? My daddy gave my hand a squeeze and smiled at me before Mama scooped me up into a hug. And another nice phrase there. So, okay. What a lot of information there. So make sure you have a quick wriggle in your seat, quick shake your hands, some nice deep breaths because it helps us concentrate. In a moment, children, it's going to be time for you to have a go at doing some talking and writing about characters and your diary entries yourself. Let me show you now one of the sheets on today's worksheets. So, we'll come back to this one. The one that I'd like to show you all today is this sheet here. And this is a bit like a planning sheet for an evacuee diary. A little bit like when we're doing art, we might sketch and practice before we do our final piece of art. When we do writing, it's really, really good to do some practice and write some notes as well. Perhaps the notes that you wrote at the start could be used as well today. I'm going to zoom in and we'll quickly look at these questions and then I will send you off while we have a parent Q&A to do some writing and talking, hopefully, if you're working with a partner as well. Let's just zoom in and have a little look. I'm going to go off screen for a moment. There we go. Here are the questions for your character, your evacuee character. You need to think of a name for them. And a city where they're from. Do you remember some of the big cities that we learned about where evacuees left from? You need to think about their age. And you might like to write what their hobbies and interests are. Here are some questions. Now, if you're not writing on the worksheet, you can answer these questions on a normal piece of paper. I will leave them up on the screen during the Q&A. How do you feel about being evacuated? It could be a mixture of feelings, couldn't it? What will you pack to remind you of home? Most children being evacuated were allowed to take 1 or 2 small items of their choice. They didn't have much space in their cases, but they might have taken one small thing to remind them of home. I wonder what your host family is like. What will they be like? What about your home family, your real family that you might be leaving behind? What are they like? And how do you feel about having to live in the countryside? Imagine you've lived in a city all your life. How would you feel? Okay, a lot of information to consider here, but for now, I just want you to think about your evacuee character and how they would answer these questions. Plain paper or on the worksheet, it's up to you. If you're ready, children, off you go, and we'll come back in about 10 minutes. So, parents, thank you. A lot of information, but as I said at the start today, we need a lot of information when we're doing writing because it fills our head with ideas to improve our writing and add detail. So hopefully there was a lot of detail there that children can use in their writing. I'll just zoom in on these questions just a little bit more on the screen, and then I'll come back here. There are the questions. So, parents, while children are hopefully going away and writing and talking if they have a partner about these questions, let me just show you 1 or 2 of the other things that you might like to use to extend the learning beyond today's session. So there is this worksheet here. And what this suggests is writing a paragraph. So this is really moving on into writing a diary entry. Of course, you don't need this sheet, but one of the things you might like to suggest to children that they attempt once they've answered those questions is that they have a go at writing in full a diary entry, a bit like the examples we looked at. Alternatively, if you have some slightly younger learners, quick question. Do we have to write our name? You have to write your character's name, which could be similar to yours, or you could use your own name for your character, or a completely different name. Okay, so parents, thank you for your question, Pratan. Question back to these. So you could use this sheet if you wanted to suggest children have a go at writing their own, or I think we saw briefly, there are some cards here. And if you don't feel that the writing stage would be appropriate for your children at their level of writing, or perhaps their age, you could use these questions and you could do a little bit of role play, hot seating, where your child, or maybe you as well, take turns to be interviewed. And you can then use these cards to ask your interviewee questions and you can answer in role. So there's another idea. And lastly is the suitcase. Another way to extend learning as well, if you want to carry on learning about evacuees this week, children can draw all of the items that they would pack in their suitcase. And you can do some online research or in books to find out about some of the other items that children would have had to pack, as well as maybe chose to pack. And finally, there are some labels, which as well you might want to use if you're doing some role play at home. Maybe you're going to do some role play, some drama about going to the station and being evacuated. And you could print out these or copy these labels and fill them out and attach them to your own clothing while you're doing some evacuee role play or drama. So lots of ideas to extend learning beyond the classroom. Evacuees around the world, or just World War II? A good question. Of course, today's session is all about World War II evacuees, particularly in the UK. But I think a lot of the ideas are universal, aren't they? I would imagine children being evacuated in other parts of the world at other times would be feeling similar things to the children during World War II. So if you know about another period in history or another evacuation that's happened in another part of the world, then of course you could write about that too. It's great to write about experiences that are closer to you, isn't it? Thank you. Emma on the chat here has just reminded you and me that you can send your work to homelearning@planbee.com. That's homelearning@planbee.com. And that includes not just finished work, of course, but any photos of children working we'd love to see, and we'd love to share those on these live sessions. And also we will be sharing them on our Twitter as well, and our Instagram, which is another place where you can share some lovely photos of your children working too. And we'd really encourage you to do that. Of course, make sure that you're taking care of privacy and online safety by not showing full names, that kind of thing. Okay, let's just have a quick look back at these questions again so that children can refer to them. How do you feel about being evacuated? What will you pack to remind you of home? What's your family like? What do you hope your host family will be like? And how do you feel about having to live in the countryside? So we do still have some time. We're going to allow another 3 or 4 minutes for children to do some writing, and for you hopefully to send in some photos of this writing so that we can have a little look at it before the end of the session. Are there any other questions from parents about home learning in general, today's session and making the most of it, our upcoming sessions, or anything like that? I would be very happy to answer your questions now. And while those questions are coming in, I'm just going to look back up at some other questions in the live chat here. Can you use onomatopoeia? What a brilliant question. Well, yes, of course you can in your writing. Yes, you could use onomatopoeia, and that's words that when you say them sound like what they're describing. I'm just going to have a quick look to see if we've had any pictures in already. So please bear with me while I'm doing that. Hopefully it doesn't look like the stream has frozen again. Let's have a look. Oh, lovely. Okay, I can see that we've had 1 or 2 pictures in already, and we will look at those in a moment. Okay. Another thing that I would remind you of is that if you'd like to, if you missed any of these live sessions, they are now up on our YouTube channel as well, and make sure that you've subscribed to the YouTube channel, because then you get alerts about our scheduled upcoming online learning sessions, which we're carrying on for the rest of this week up until the Easter break. Okay. So hopefully quite a few of you are answering these questions about your evacuee character now. And you can use that information and all of your fantastic ideas about your character to go on and write a diary entry in your own time. But if you do that, or if you do any other work around evacuees moving on from today's session, I would love to see it. So please do email me, and I try to email everybody back as quickly as possible about your lovely work. So please do email it now or later to homelearning@planbee.com. And let's just have a look, see if we've got any more emails coming in. And please bear with me while I'm just downloading these, because we will share some of this really fantastic... Oh, I'm seeing some brilliant work already. Lovely. Great. Now I expect that we won't have quite as many today because there will be people taking a little bit longer to write. So we'll just have a look at this first one now. And children, please don't let me stop you from your writing and your discussion as well. I'm going to show these now for those of you who would like to stop and look. We're going to look now at some writing from Max and Melly. Welcome back. Let's just get this where we can see it. Okay, here we go. What lovely writing and some great ideas here. I like how you've made some lists down one side of your notepad, and that really helps you having that next to your writing. Let's read this out. And this is a diary entry by Rosie. So you've gone straight into a diary entry. Fantastic. Dear diary, I am extremely nervous. What if I don't make any friends? What will my host family be like? Suddenly I saw my friend on the train and it made me feel better. She was nervous too. We sat next to each other on the train. When we got there, we got picked up by a lovely family and we had such a good time. That's really nice. I like your questions in there. They really show how apprehensive Rosie must have felt. That's really nice. And that's Melly's. So let's have a look now at another one. And this is Max, I think. Let's have a look. Okay. Here we go. Dear diary, today is the day when I get sent away to a new family. I wonder what they will be like. I am really excited to get away from these bombs. But I'm also really sad because I won't get to see my family. Me and Jeff have just hopped onto the red, black and green steam train. Jeff is 4 years younger than me, so he's really sad about leaving all his family and stuff back in London. I wonder how our new family will treat me and Jeff. And more fantastic questions in there again. I imagine, don't you, that children travelling would have had so many unanswered questions, and that would have made them feel apprehensive, wouldn't it? Lovely writing. Well done, you two. Let's have a look at another one. Please bear with me while I download these. Okay. Oh, lovely. And this is from Faraj. Here we go. Dear Diary, I felt lonely. I thought I would be lost and broken-hearted. I might be going to another house, missing my family. When I'm sleeping, I would have horrible nightmares. Oh no! That evacuee doesn't sound like they're having a very nice time, does it? I wonder what their next diary entry might be like. Perhaps, once they've settled in, they might feel differently. Thank you, Faraj. Okay, I'm just downloading another. It's so nice to see your writing, everybody. Thank you for sending it in. So, this is... okay, lovely. So this is Sahaj's work, and Sahaj has answered the questions, so let's have a look. So, this evacuee character is called Alex, and let's see, they're from London. Oh, they like chocolate, and they love football as well. And Alex feels adventurous, but alone, and as an adult. Goodness, yeah. I should think a lot of children suddenly felt a lot more adult, didn't they? Having to take care of themselves, leaving their family behind. What would you take with you? So many chocolates. And Alex's family is very small and only has 3 members. Oh dear, and they're the most angriest family in the world. Wow. It would be interesting to live a life in the countryside. Well, yes, so I suppose some children would have been very interested about the differences, wouldn't they, compared to living in the cities? Well, I have loved seeing some of your writing. Fantastic. What lovely writing, and I can't wait to see more. Let's just see, I just want to double check if we have any more questions or anything. No. Okay, so we'll wrap up today's session in a few minutes. I'd just like to say, as always, that it's an honour to be able to do these live learning sessions for parents and children while we're all at home. And I always love answering your questions and seeing your work. So please do keep those coming in, and please do join us for some future sessions. Reminders about those at the very end in a moment. Just for now, some quick reminders about these worksheets. So, again, you don't need to print these, you can show them on screen. Question cards for role play, interviewing an evacuee in role. You could do this with a partner or with a grown-up. There's the question sheet, which we've used today to answer questions about your evacuee character. There's this sheet, which you could use, or just use plain lined paper, to write a diary entry in role. And then there's the suitcase. If you want to extend learning, then you might like to draw the suitcase packed with items an evacuee might have taken with them. And labels, these are nice as well to fill out with the details of your character, and you might like to use them if you're doing any role play or drama. So, let's just have a look if we have any more. Not right now. Okay. So, to wrap up, one last reminder, homelearning@planbee.com is where you can send photos and examples of your work. Thank you so much, those of you who have stuck around with our slightly longer session today. It's so important, isn't it, to get all those good ideas in there for when we're doing some writing. I can't wait to see some more examples. I can't wait to join you again for some future learning sessions. Don't forget, Lower Key Stage 2, that's Year 3 and Year 4, is on Friday at 11. But Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, there are sessions for older and younger learners too as well. So make sure you're enrolled and we'll get the information out to you. Thank you so much again for joining me, and I hope you all have a fantastic afternoon. Thanks everybody, thanks to Emma and Abra on the chat, and I hope to see you all again soon. Bye bye.